Oh man, time for one of those games. Considered one of the worst NES games ever made, it's M.U.S.C.L.E Tag Team Match, or simply called M.U.S.C.L.E as it says in big ol' letters. In Japan, this game is called Kinnikuman M.U.S.C.L.E Tag Match, and is an important first here on the Famicom. It's the first game in both America and Japan to be a licensed game made solely to sell a product. Sure, we've had licensed games before, but none of them trying to capitalize on a current trend. Kinnikuman was a Japanese manga released in Shonen Jump magazine between 1979 and 1987 by Takashi Shimada and Yoshinori Nakai. Originally starting as a parody of Japanese superheroes, but became a part of Japanese pop culture when the magazine shifted to a wrestling theme. Its legacy was so strong, Shimada and Nakai continued the comic in 2011 and still do it up to today. And of course an anime series eventually airing between 1983 and 1986. The series was so popular, a line of toys were created called Keshi. These were apparently little mini-figurine-shaped erasers based off licensed properties that were really huge in Japan, and when anything was huge in Japan, America has to cash in on it somehow. Mattel brought the Kinnikuman toys over, rebranding it as M.U.S.C.L.E. Millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere, and replacing the rubber with plastic. The toys were a big hit, which led Bandai to porting this game as one of the first third-party titles for the NES. Yes, this is the Famicom introduction of Bandai. I mentioned before that Bandai published a few Namco games in the States, but back east they mostly stuck to making licensed games based off the toy license they manufactured. One of which, of course, being Kinnikuman. But since Bandai was a toy company and not a game developer, they outsourced subcontracted work to other companies, and of course, the company they chose was Toei, making this Toei's first original title for the Famicom. Taking control of 2 of 8 Kinnikuman characters, you'll wrestle, sort of, in the first wrestling game for the Famicom and NES. And I'm just gonna get this out of the way, but I can't stand wrestling games. If you like them, then good for you, but to me, they're the absolute worst fighting games you can ever play, and this one is no exception. And yet, I don't think it's as awful as everyone says it is. I mean, I had a horrible time, don't get me wrong. It's a terrible 2-button fighter with a punch and a jump. No strategy, just punch or do a jump attack until the player runs out of life in a 2 out of 3 match, and then it's on to the next round. Looking at this, you expect some Atari 2600 SG-1000 simplistic nonsense. But credit to Toei, a company known for their abominations, they do add some elements to make the game a little more memorable. Like bouncing off the ropes, doing backdrop suplexes, and the added element of tag team mode to help you out if your player's doing bad. They also switched the arenas up to add some element of challenge, like this electrical rope level. Oh my gosh. Seizure warning much? And finally, there's a little energy ball that gets thrown into the ring by Kinnikuman's little friend Meat that'll make the matches a little more interesting, as the person who grabs the ball will be able to pull off their ultimate move for ultimate damage. I guess if you were a kid and loved Kinnikuman or even M.U.S.C.L.E enough, this game could interest you, being able to play as your favorite characters in an interactive experience. But to everyone else, you'll just find a pretty lackluster wrestling game made solely to cash in on the fact the Famicom was going to be profitable enough to sucker kids in with games based off their favorite licensed properties. Yeah, I don't recommend it.